Hello and welcome. I'm Maria from Sew Through Time, and this time, let's dress a gentleman and lady for their afternoon promenade in 1882. The men's base layers are drawers and a shirt. For women, it is a chemise and drawers or combination underwear like I'm wearing. And next for men came the socks. These were typically silk or wool or cotton sometimes, or linen for the summer. Unlike modern day socks, they of course wouldn't have any elastane in them, and they were typically much higher than most modern day socks, coming up to mid-calf almost to the knee. And because of this lack of elastane, they could sometimes be held up with sock garters that would wrap around the leg just below the knee and then clip onto the socks. For this particular man, they just don't droop that much, so he doesn't bother with them. And for women, next comes the corset. This is basically your bra and also the thing that builds the illusion of the correct silhouette. Tight lacing was not common in the era. It usually was just moving soft tissue around. Men's shirts fastened with separate screw-on buttons. This allows for the front bib to be starched as hard as you want it and still get the shirt on. There's a slit at the armpit, but because this particular man is left-handed and the slit is of course for right-handed people, it doesn't really help him much. And next for women come the stockings, and they are held with garters above the knee. And for day wear, the bib doesn't need to be that heavily starched because it's going to be mostly covered by the waistcoat or vest. In the era, it would be highly unlikely that these people would be starting their dressing from scratch in the afternoon because they would have most likely been wearing something for morning wear or at least a wrapper of some kind. So they would already have their base layers on. And the shirt cuffs are finished with cufflinks. Like I said, the female silhouette was very much created, so in case you didn't have enough of a derriere on your own, this is the layer where you would add a bustle pad of some sort. And you could also pad out the corset bust area. And there was absolutely no shame in it. It was just about creating the outer body. I come with my own padding, so I'm just adding my petticoat. And for masculine attire, next comes the collar. This is a separate starched piece that is attached by collar studs both in the back and in the front. The attached collars of the earlier eras had basically been reserved only for working shirts at this time. 1882 is at the very tail end of the natural form era, and there is fullness in the petticoat, but all of it is reserved to the back. This creates a very narrow silhouette in the front with a little bit of soft flowy curves in the back, and allows for enough room to comfortably walk, though the bigger bustles are already making a comeback. And next for men come the pants. These were narrow in silhouette and typically made out of either wool or wool and a silk blend. For the female attire, next comes the corset cover. This smooths out the corset lines and provides sweat protection for your outer clothes. They came in many different kinds, and I opted for a knit alpaca vest because it will additionally provide warmth and fill out the neckline. As for the masculine pants, they have a button fly closure and the waist closes with hooks and eyes. And suspenders or braces were often worn for comfort. Feminine vests like this could have a button closure, but if you're gonna wear it with a brooch, you can just leave them off because you don't want the buttons to rub against the brooch. Brooches were more common than necklaces for day wear jewelry. The masculine pants of this era are always high-waisted and the suspenders button on, with that distinct swallow's tail in the back. And next comes your waistcoat or vest. The brightly colored vests from a few decades ago have been replaced by somber woolen ones, and have a high neckline for day wear. And for feminine attire, next comes the pocket. Your outer garments could also have sewn-in pockets, but this one can fit a lot more into it and won't cause your skirt to drape funny even if you put something heavy in it. Though chatelaine bags and purses were also used. And when putting on a vest, of course, comes a gentleman's pocket watch. It is attached to a chain called a fob, and this attaches to the waistcoat's buttonhole, while the watch is in the pocket. And for the feminine attire, next comes the underskirt or skirt. This, along with the overskirt drapery, form the visible skirt portion of the dress. Because with the exception of wrappers, dressing gowns, some house dresses and polonaises, dresses of this era typically consisted of several pieces. For masculine attire, next comes shoes or boots, depending on the weather and the dustiness of the roads. And next comes the necktie. Both cravats and bow ties were common, not yet the modern tie that we know. And because we're sadly lacking in the valet department, I come to tie the bow tie. Because in the Victorian era, we just wouldn't be dressing ourselves like this. We would have a lady's maid and a valet to help us. And this doesn't apply just to the richest elite. Even just your average middle-class person would definitely have at least a cook and a maid. And next for the feminine attire comes the overskirt drapery. This can match either the skirt or the bodice if they are made out of separate fabrics. And it's made on its own separate waistband, which was very typical in American fashion. In continental European fashion, they were oftentimes attached to the underskirt. But that allows for less versatility for mixing and matching, so it's not advisable if you're on a budget. This one has fairly simple drapery to match the militaristic style of the bodice. They can be draped as fancily or as plainly as fits the bodice style and your personal preference. And next comes the said bodice. Bodices intended for daytime wear were typically long-sleeved and high-necked in this era, and could be full of fancy details and decorations or could be very plain. For masculine attire, you have the option of a morning coat or a frock coat for a promenade. The newer sack-style coats would be considered too informal for a promenade. That would have been the equivalent to a modern-day suit jacket. This gentleman opted for the more formal frock coat, and kid leather gloves in either cream or colors were appropriate for day wear. These are a well-fitted fashion item, not necessarily meant for warmth, and they would button or snap closed at the wrist. For women going outdoors, it was typical to wear a cape unless it was very warm, or cold enough to require a proper coat, mantle, or dolman. For warmer weather, you could also wear a lace cape if you preferred, and next comes the hat. Because hats and bonnets of this era typically sat on top of the hair rather than go all the way to encircle your head, they were typically secured in place with hat pins. This goes through the hat and your hair and comes out the other side. For feminine attire, both kid leather and cloth gloves are an option. And tan was the most fashionable for daytime wear, though other colors were seen as well as white. And with a frock coat, a gentleman would most typically wear a top hat because of the formality of the jacket. And as for the buttons, a frock coat can be either completely buttoned closed or left completely open, depending on the wearer's personal preference and the temperature. And for colder weather, a gentleman would add an overcoat. And now we're ready to go on our promenade. Promenading was an activity mostly for more well-to-do middle-class and upper-class city folk. Unlike walking just in your garden or outdoors somewhere, the activity itself is the walking to be seen. It was a way to show off your latest fashions and socialize with your peers. And it was especially important for courting couples as a way to get to know the other person with a lot less social etiquette rules than at a ball or coming to call on one at one's house. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know down below in the comments if something about this surprised you. And if you haven't already subscribed and you'd like to do that now, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!